Charles Soule and Stephen Cummings brings the Crimson Reign to a close as Lady Qi'Ra makes her final moves against the Sith, while Emperor Palpatine begins his hunt for the elusive Crimson Dawn. Charles Soule concludes the second part of his sprawling Crimson Dawn trilogy with an issue that kind of leaves us with more questions than answers, but gives us a great look at Qi'Ra's motives and what her endgame is. While I really enjoyed the build-up, especially with the archivist Sava San and her mission with the Knights of Ren, I was very much hoping for some answers in regards to her mission, especially with the idea of the Screaming Key and what it unlocked, since that was such an interesting part of when the Knights of Ren started getting the key in the earlier issues, and we saw them in Darth Vader and all these other issues, and then we never really learn anything about it. Now obviously we're going to get to learn about it in the Hidden Empire, the final part of this trilogy, but it would have been good just to sort of signpost what exactly the key does, what it unlocks, because we see what it unlocks, but that's never explained either and kind of opens up more questions to be answered. Despite not many answers, Soule continues to make great use of the Knights of Ren, and just like Ethan Sachs has done in his Bounty Hunters book, gives us some great characteristics through them, and their attitude is great and sets out their motives really well, and they're really fun characters. Stephen Cummings finishes up his art for the event series with some really awesome set pieces, and ones I felt were lifted directly from Rebels and Clone Wars, especially the settings, particularly the Darkside hellscape the Archivist went to with the giant stone monsters, which reminded me a lot of Malachor from Rebels, you know, with all of the people encased in stone that had been like flash frozen in stone and everything. Crimson Reign issue 5 was an okay finale to the big recent Star Wars event, giving some great development to certain characters like the Knights of Ren, the Archivist, and Qi'Ra herself, but suffering greatly from not many questions being answered, and even more things being set into motion, no doubt for the finale of this trilogy, Hidden Empire, which is coming out in November. I'm going to give this issue a 6.5 out of 10. Crimson Reign issue 5 finds Darth Vader in audience with the Emperor, who tells his apprentice that the Sith have an enemy, citing how with the insurrection of the Hutt Council, the attack on the Executor, the current war between the crime syndicates, and the destruction of Commander Zara's fleet and assassination of his 10 royal guards, there is something afoot. Palpatine also mentions that the Screaming Key was recently stolen from Vader's own stronghold, and he fought the Knights of Ren, knowing they are weaklings, yet someone has made them brazen enough to attack Vader directly. Palpatine believes these are all part of a campaign of diversion, calling for director Barsha to be brought in. The shadowy man enters, kneeling before the Emperor before telling him and Vader that his division of the ISB have retrieved intelligence from various criminal organizations across the galaxy, and the current war between them is of great interest to them, since it's not a simple friction between syndicates that is causing the war, since they all fight with the purpose, believing that they are fighting for Palpatine's favor. Barsha reveals that the leadership of the syndicates think that the Emperor wishes to end the arrangement with the Hutts and selects a new syndicate to take their place, and this rumor has spread all from one place, Crimson Dawn. On the Vermilion, Margot tells Qi'Ra that the ISB is beginning to work out their plan, so Qi'Ra tells her to begin the next phase of their plan, wanting her to inform Trinia. She thanks Margot for everything, knowing that it will all be worth it in the end as she hugs her most trusted advisor. Margot leaves as Qi'Ra tells the Archivist that she knows what to do, hoping that she is ready. Sava knows that she is, but is relying on myths and legends for this, but Qi'Ra gives her the Screaming Key, telling her that all myths come from truth, wanting her to find it, and she will send the Knights of Ren with her since they can handle whatever she runs into. Sava leaves as Qi'Ra tells Catalia that they need to talk since they might not get another chance to from now on. Catalia asks what they're going to talk about, learning it will be about each other. Vader and Palpatine meanwhile walk the halls of the Imperial Palace, going over the revelation that Crimson Dawn is behind the Syndicate Wars and everything else that's happened to them recently. Palpatine can sense their intelligence was right and that Crimson Dawn has targeted the Sith. He knows that Vader met their leader, knowing her name is Lady Qi'Ra, and the foolish woman challenged him to a duel, and while her skill was no true threat to him, it was noticeable since she trained in Teräs Käsi. Palpatine is surprised that she was trained in a form that is used to fight against Force wielders specifically, but Vader thinks that she had training beyond that, seeing tactics she used in only one other person, one of Palpatine's former apprentices. Palpatine thinks that he's making an accusation about him, stating that he did not train the woman, but maybe one he did train did, and being that she was wallowing in the mud with the criminal syndicates, it can only be one person, Darth Maul. Palpatine says that if Maul taught her the secrets of Sith combat, there is another question they need to ask. What else did he tell her? The Archivist and the Knights of Ren meanwhile arrive at a dark side hellscape, where the Archivist tells Ren her accounts state that the chamber must be activated before they can get to the lock that the screaming key opens. Massif doesn't really want to wake up the hellscape and its screaming denizens, but Ren knows they don't have a choice unless they all want to forget it and just leave. They know that doing that, however, will put a target on their heads from the Sith, so they press on, asking Archivist what they are to do. The woman isn't really sure, sensing the Force, but she can't use the power, so it has to be Ren who has to use the key. Ren grabs the key and levitates it in his hand with the Force, and after a moment, a scream echoes from it, reanimating the screaming creatures trapped in stone around them. Qi'Ra meanwhile tells Catalea that she is the heir to two syndicates, the Mourner's Wail and the Unbroken clan, something the girl already knows, so Qi'Ra tells her that she was also born into this life like Catalea. But while Catalea grew up with the pedigree of her inheritance, Qi'Ra didn't, remembering how Lady Proxima punished her after she tried to flee Corellia with Han Solo. She remembers being called a scrum rat, and she started with nothing, so she had to be smarter, deadlier, faster, and more seductive and colder than anyone else. And on her way up the Crimson Dawn totem, she found it got a lot harder to take others down, so she grew harder by doing it. She tells Catalea that the central principle of running a syndicate is to trust no one, and that relying on trust means you failed. She also tells her to treat all interactions like a transaction, and Catalea thinks that just sounds so exhausting, asking if Qi'Ra treats people like Margot like this as well, and Qi'Ra reveals that Margot thought that Qi'Ra took her place in Crimson Dawn, trying to kill Qi'Ra 3 times, but each time Qi'Ra let her live, eventually understanding her value, and now Margot will do whatever she commands her to. Catalea asks why she's being told this, learning it's because no one ever told Qi'Ra it. Suddenly an emergency transmission comes through from one of Kira's agents, but then even more begin flooding in, telling her that the Empire are now targeting the Vermilion after finding that Crimson Dawn has been behind everything. Qi'Ra tells Catalea to go with Trinia, as she tells the girl that she'll be doing what she's always been doing, whatever it takes. The Knights of Ren and the Archivist meanwhile escape the giant stone monsters they awakened with the key. The Archivist says that they need to get to the center of the room and use the key, something easier said than done thanks to the monsters who try and squash Archivist, but the Knight Bazra saves her from certain death. The Knights find their blasters do nothing to the monsters, but Ren knows his lightsaber does the trick, cutting the arm off one of the creatures, but the group continue towards the center, where Bazra suddenly force pushes Archivist out of the way as the Knight is crushed by one of the monsters. Archivist never wanted this to happen, but Ren says that Bazra's death is on her head as they make it to the center. Archivist races towards the head as Ren tells her that if she takes too long, they will feed her to the monsters. Inside the head, Sava activates a red heart-shaped device with the key, activating its lock and turning the monsters back to stone as she finds a sand-filled timer-like device, saying that she never really believed it existed. She contacts Qi'Ra, telling her boss that it's still there, and Qi'Ra is glad to hear, telling Sava that she'll call back soon as she crushes her comlink. Qi'Ra tells the people gathered that Palpatine knows that they are hurting him, so he's hunting them. She had hoped that this day wouldn't have come so soon, but she has planned for it, as she proclaims that she has people all across the galaxy, in every syndicate, corporation, and even the Rebel Alliance, all who have been bought, persuaded, loved, threatened, and blackmailed. She sends out the order to them all, telling them all to commit chaos in the Imperial ranks in any way possible, all to poison Palpatine's machine, and when the Empire staggers, she will unveil her masterstroke, the Hidden Empire.